Okay. I got opinions. I got a lot of opinions. That's all they are is opinions, but today, my opinion that I want to talk about is balance. I'm not talking about standing on rocks and rivers. We're standing in canoes, casting fly rods. I'm talking about balance in life and how we can do it better being a poor, marginal, or awesome fly fisherman. So this is stuff I've known for a long time, but it just hits me more and more every day. As I get older, I can't help but think about it. About where the human race came from, where we've been, and where we're going. Where we are now, I think, for the most part, sucks. So where we're going is just going to suck more. What do I mean? We still are. We are animals like the rest of the animal kingdom. But we used to be animals just like the rest of the animal kingdom. We lived outside. We got everything we needed from outside. We were part of the outside. And we knew it. We probably didn't have to be told. It was just natural. It's the way it was. Just the way a deer knows that it's part of the outdoors, or a trout, or anything else. And somewheres along the line, we lost all that. We got really smart. And we built houses, and then we built towns, and then we built cities and countries. And now we can't do anything without all that. We're helpless. It really aggravates me, and balance is gone. I would say billions of people in the world, there might be 1% of the human race that actually has balance in life. And what do I mean by that? I mean the whole thing about, listen, there's like 100, you can make fun of me afterwards because I'm trying to think of this in my head. And I sucked at math. I never made it past third grade as far as math goes. From third grade, I went once division hit. But I think there's like 168 hours in a week. That's 7 days. So we'll base this off of a 5-day week. 100 and what? 40 something hours? This is going to make me sound stupid. See, we're so smart, we're stupid. You work at least a minimum of 40 hours of your work week. 40 hours of your 5-day week. And I know a lot of people, and I've done it in the past too, work 6 days a week, sometimes 7. For what? If all you do is work, and that's awesome, you gotta, either you love your career or you just need your career because you have to pay for your house, and you have to pay for your car, and you have to pay for all the stuff that's in your house. But you're at work the whole time. You're not enjoying that stuff. I just bought a new fishing kayak, and I plan on using it every chance I get. There's going to be days where I'm going to call in. I'm going to use vacation days. I'm going to use personal days. I'm going to use sick days. Whoever's watching, this is the way it is. I will call in sick so that I can go fishing this year. Sorry about reality, but reality is real. And the reality is, I will call in sick. I don't feel good today. And I'm going fishing. And it's all about balance. If you spend your entire life chasing a dollar so that at the end of your life, you can go do what you want, what if the end of your life comes tomorrow? What if the end of your life comes to you in the form of you've just retired and now you've got cancer and you're going to spend your last days in a hospital bed? You just don't know. And you're probably going to feel a lot of emotions at that time. Let down, one, because maybe you're not ready to die, but two, because you didn't do the stuff that you thought you were going to do later on. You never know if later on it's going to be there. You've got to balance out your life. This is why I fish so much. And you've got to do it for the right reasons. Balance is an important thing to me. And for the longest time, I didn't have it. It was all gung-ho. Gung-ho. Go, go, go. Work, work, work. The jobs I had were, at the time, I thought they were pretty awesome. And so I didn't mind working. 16 Stone Brew Pub had a carry-out barbecue today. So I got a couple of growlers while I was there. Trash Panda Stout. It's awesome. So what I'm saying is, I know a lot of people who fish and hike and paddle and camp and do all that stuff. And even if they're out there all the time, they will tell you that they don't do it enough. And the reason is, we are not meant to be cooped up in buildings all day. We are not meant to be cooped up in a house. I work in a production plant. Am I grateful for my job? You bet, because I need a house. Why do I need a house? Because I have a family. I've got 2 boys. I have to have a home for me to live, for them to stay with me when they're with me. I need a car to get to work. So I need to go to work to make the payments on the car so that I can get to work. See this vicious cycle? Someone's probably already told you about it, but I'm going to hammer it to you. You are not meant, I'm grateful for my job, but you are not meant to be cooped up inside a building. You're an animal. You are part of the animal kingdom. Somewhere along the ways, we lost all that. And I think it's why a lot of people are miserable today. They have no clue. Maybe they even grew up in a city and they've never been anywhere, but they're miserable. I guarantee you, you give them a week. You give them a few days. You give them whatever out in the great outdoors. If they're from New York City, send them up to the Adirondacks, the Smoky Mountains. If they're from LA, send them to the desert. Send them to the mountains. I promise you that once they become comfortable out there, they will realize, they will have this big awakening. You will realize that you are not meant. This rat race is something humans made. We were so smart that we became stupid. And we lost everything that was important. That is what fly fishing does for me. It gets me out. It gets me away. It gives me time to think about everything that's actually important, which is really, honestly, it's nothing in my daily life. Nothing in my daily life is important. My job is only important because I have 2 kids. If I didn't have 2 kids, at this point, I have a really nice backpack. I'd probably fill it and walk away from my house. Everything we do is just a cycle to keep doing it. You've got to break away. You have to get away. But when you do it, you've got to do it the right way. You've got to understand why you're out there, and you've got to get the right stuff out of it. I had a good discussion with somebody a couple weeks ago about what kind of fish we like to catch. And I like to catch anything. It doesn't matter to me. If the only thing I can find that day are creek chubs, well then guess what? I'm going to catch a couple creek chubs and I'm not going to complain about it. Maybe I'm a little let down that there's not something bigger, but it's nothing that's going to ruin my day. If I'm going for bass and all I can find is sunfish, so be it. Adapt and overcome. You're out there. Who cares what kind of fish you're catching? Now I got the hiccups. None of that should matter. A lot of people have these preconceived notions of what fly fishing is supposed to be. And that's cool because it's something different for everybody. For me, it's just an escape. For some people, I don't know. I've known people that fly fishing is only for trout. That is it. And it's only done on dry flies. And that is it. And anybody else is doing anything different, it's no good. They're doing it wrong. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. Somebody asked me at work if I ever fished Joe's flies. And I was like, what's that? And then I remembered, and he showed me a picture. They're not for fly rods. It's hardware. It's a spinner and some clasps and a fly tied after the spinner. They work awesome, but it's not for fly fishing. He said, well, would you fish it on a fly rod? I said, me personally, no, because it just wouldn't feel right. I mean, the actual feeling of it. Metal. I don't like casting with weight anyways, but it wouldn't feel right. And there are people who would actually crucify you for tying something like that on there. And I said, but who really cares? Because once again, this whole fly fishing thing is something that man made. So who is anyone to tell you that it's right or wrong? You can fish a nymph with a bead head, but God forbid you actually fish a jig with deer hair, because that jig, the lead is molded onto the hook. It wasn't put on as a bead. How is that any different? How is a jig with a lead head cast onto the hook any different than a hook with a bead slipped on it and then tied the rest of the way? They both use deer hair. They both use feathers, whatever you want, and they both have weight on them. How is one different than the other? It's absolutely asinine, some of the rules we come up with. And this is why humans suck so much, because we take a good thing that's supposed to be fun and then we attach rules to it, and they make no sense. And then all of a sudden, well, you're doing it wrong, or that person's not doing it right because of some rule that somebody made up. It's a man-made rule. You can do whatever you want. You know what? This just made me think of something. And I even have it marked because I read this at a, I don't know, some type of a fish club meeting or something once. Awesome. This is from Carper Jerks. Not a book about carp fishing. This is my second book, and it's more fish stories. So chapter 5 is called Moments of Balance. It's short, so I'll read it. 1, 2, 3 pages. Right? 3 pages. All right. Moments of balance. Every now and then, I run across a fisherman who's all about how many fish they caught on a given day, or catching only big fish, or only trout, or only bass. Something specific that, when not achieved, sours their attitude on the water. It makes them gripe and complain, or even worse yet, turns them into cocky, arrogant, and egotistical blowhards. They could be the best angler I have ever met in a long time, possibly ever. But as soon as they start making excuses for why they're not catching the biggest fish, or why they aren't catching enough of them, or complaining about the creek chubs that keep taking their flies, all their knowledge loses most of its merit in my head. Likewise, when they start bragging and belittling other anglers because they don't catch as many, don't fish for the right fish, or the right way, when they must tell everyone they meet how great they are, then all the knowledge they might actually have is, in my mind, lost, meaningless. It means little to nothing simply because they've missed the most important part of it all. And that part has nothing to do with the size of a fish, or number, or perfect cast, or the ideal fish. Once at an old job, another coworker spotted the stickers on the back window of my truck and the rod vault on the roof, and he hunted me down. I was sitting at a table with a bunch of other maintenance guys, all in dirty coveralls at break time. I hadn't been working there more than a week. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a face shot in front of me from over my shoulder and asked me if the silver Tacoma with the stickers and rod vault was mine. Did I fly fish? I told him it was mine. Yeah, sure I fly fished. Then he says, hey, come over here for a minute. I got to talk to you. I figured maybe he had something he wanted to sell. Who knew? So off to the side of the break area, he asked me what kind of fishing I do. I told him just about anything that swims. I really like going north in the Adirondacks for brookies, on small streams, but smallmouths are my favorite. I barely got out the last word before he was cutting me off and giving me the fly fishing equal to the Gettysburg Address on how great of a trout fisherman he was. I couldn't get in a word. Not that I tried. I was too bewildered. and blindsided to even come up with anything to say. In about 5 minutes, I knew where he fished, how many times a year he fished, how many trout he caught, how many of them a year were 20 inches or better, and that he knew the river better than anyone else. That last bit wasn't an assumption on my part. He told me himself. The next day, just as he promised, he found me again, and this time fired up his digital camera to show me the hundreds of photos of all the over 20-inch brown trout he'd caught from that specific stretch of river. I never bothered to attempt to tell him that I knew the stretch he fished. And I never attempted to tell him that I knew it was only barely 2 miles long and that they were all stocked. And I never bothered to mention that I could figure out that if he was catching hundreds of browns over 20 inches out of this one short stretch and fishing the same spots every time, that he was most likely just catching the same fish over and over. I never bothered to tell him any of this because he didn't want to hear me talk anyway. He wanted to hear himself. Lucky for me, the job was in a huge production plant and it was easy to avoid him. It didn't take very long for some of the other guys to find out that I was a fly fisherman. Word travels fast, you know. And we seemed to look for like-minded individuals. They'd all grin as they asked me if he'd found me yet. The thing is, I'm sure he was a really great angler. I saw his fly box one night in a parking lot. He practically dragged me to his truck to show it to me. It was the type of organized and perfect box that would belong to someone who'd figured out the perfect pattern for a specific place and perfected perfection. I could see that much. But there was no way I was ever going fishing with him. I probably could have learned so much from him, but I'd have gotten tired of listening to how good he was before we even got to the river. And if you weren't dry fly fishing for trout over 20 inches, you weren't doing it right. He'd tell you that, too. Fly fishing was for trout over 20 inches on dry flies. Period. End of story. Walleye were to be caught on spinning rods. Bass were for something else entirely different. They had nothing to do with the fly rod and were a lower form of angling altogether. I just couldn't take anyone seriously that took themselves so seriously. None of it should be so serious. To me, that's the whole point. Seriously. And here's the important part. At some point, it becomes about you and the water, and everything else just falls into place. Fish only matter when they're caught, but don't ruin a day when they're not. And life balances out for those brief times in between all other life. I figured this out a long time ago, but it still hits me like an epiphany on a regular basis. It's pretty much the reason I string up fly rods and struggle into waders. Why I douse myself in as much DEET as I can, get out of a bottle of bug spray, and fight through swarms of black flies and mosquitoes. Why I layer up in the winter and deal with frozen toes and frozen guides. Why I drive for hours and hike for miles. And why I make spur-of-the-moment decisions to drop what I'm doing and run out back to the creek. To find that balance. I'm still amazed at how it happens, after it's happened more often than not. The feeling hasn't gotten old, hasn't become normal. I haven't become complacent about it, and I don't ever take it for granted. Each time out is like a gift I never saw coming, even though it was the very thing I went looking for. You got to go out for the right reason, and that's to unplug from everything. Chase a specific fish, cool. Get good at it, awesome. But the whole reason you're going out there, recognize it, is to get away from all of this, is to get away from your job, bills, drama. All that is unnecessary. It's all man-made. Man made it because man is so smart, he's stupid. You are going out to leave everything behind, and that's your balance. Whether you're fishing, whether you're climbing a mountain, whether you're whitewater rafting, whether you're hiking, camping, whatever, it's all about balance. If it's not, hey, good for you as long as you're happy. But honestly, that is what it's about. Maybe you just don't realize it. I work my 40 hours. It's all I try to work. Some weeks it's less. Because life is short. And because life is short, time is short. Break it down into weeks, it's really short. I had a really good friend who we always made fun of him. And then all of a sudden, he called me up out of the blue after not talking to him for a couple of years. And I went and visited him in a hospital. It was a good day and a really crappy day. He had found out he had pancreatic cancer. And he explained to the doctor why he was at the point he was at, why he felt the way he did. You know, if it was going to be a big struggle just to buy time, he just wanted to finish things that he wanted to finish before his time was up. He had an idea. I'm probably going to live till I'm 80. That was his idea. He picked how old he thought he would live to because of his family and all that stuff, how he lived. He says, maybe I'll live till I'm 80. So from the point he was at to 80 years old, he knew how many years it was. But then he multiplied that times 52 because there's 52 weeks in a year. And that number was how many weeks he thought he had left. When you break your life down into weeks, it sounds a lot more serious than, I think I got 20-something years left. When you say I have this many weeks left, it kind of hits home. And we used to make fun of him for it. Then he all of a sudden wasn't feeling good and had pancreatic cancer. And those weeks were serious. And he told the doctor that. And I had heard him tell that story, tell his whole outlook on how much time he had left. Everybody thought it was funny. I'd heard him talk about it before, years ago. But hearing him tell the doctor that in the hospital, knowing that he literally did have weeks, that was a big eye-opener. That was an epiphany, a holy shit moment. And that's what balance is all about. However many weeks you have left, call it years if you want, that's fine. But I think the weeks thing really hits home. How old do you think you're going to live to? And multiply that times 52. And that's how many weeks you have to get done what you want to do in life. I really hope it's not. I really, really hope that's not working every day. I mean, great. If you own a company, if you're the president of a big company, yeah, that's awesome. You're making big money. You think you're doing something really good. But at the end of the day, at your funeral, what do you want people to say? Well, at least he worked a lot? Or that he lived? She lived? I think that's what it comes down to. The balance. Nothing's ever going to be balanced perfectly. Nothing will ever be balanced perfectly. It's always going to tip one way or another. I think this end should be work. And this end should be everything outside of work. Fly fishing, family, everything. Work, everything else. The balance has to be tipped away from work. Or what's it all for in the end? To balance. If you like that story, you can go on Amazon and buy Carper Jerks or Reflections of a Fly Rod. And on jprossflyrods.com, you can buy the 2 books, and you should also look at the t-shirts we're doing now. It's a campaign against unbalance, I would call it. We have a whole bunch of t-shirts. I print every one of them. They come through my hands before they come to you. And they're all about unplugging, recharging, and rebooting. Disconnect to connect. I think that's probably the most important thing we can do at this point. And honestly, it's the only thing that's kept me going the past couple of years, is trying to tip the balance, the unbalanced, keep the unbalanced part, all the outdoors, fly fishing and everything that goes with it, where it takes me. I'm going to toast again to balance. See you next time.